The ancient oak's silver bark pressed against my spine as I crouched in the shadows, watching the lunar bonding ceremony unfold in the sacred circle below. Hundreds of wolves from across the territory had gathered beneath the blood moon, their eyes fixed on the raised stone platform where my sister Seraphina stood in flowing white silk, her golden hair cascading like liquid sunlight down her back. She was perfect, as always. The moon goddess's chosen daughter, destined to be Luna of our pack since the day she was born under a lunar eclipse 18 years ago. Her wolf form was pristine silver with eyes like Arctic ice, everything mine was not. Where she commanded attention, I melted into backgrounds. Where she inspired awe, I inspired, well, nothing at all. Behold, Alpha Magnus' voice boomed across the clearing, my daughter Seraphina, blessed by the moon goddess herself, ready to accept her mate bond with the great Alpha King Darius Blackthorn. A collective intake of breath rippled through the crowd as he stepped forward. I'd heard the whispers about Darius Blackthorn my entire life. The youngest Alpha King in werewolf history. A warrior who'd united 3 warring territories before his 25th birthday. They said his wolf was pure midnight, larger than any beast that had walked these lands in centuries. They said his eyes could see straight through to your soul. None of the whispers had prepared me for the reality of him. He moved like liquid shadow across the ceremonial ground, power radiating from every step. His dark hair was longer than tradition dictated, falling just past his shoulders in waves that caught the moonlight. When he looked up at Seraphina, his features were carved from granite, sharp cheekbones, a jaw that could cut glass, and eyes so dark they seemed to swallow light. He was beautiful in the way natural disasters were beautiful. Terrible and magnificent and completely devastating. Seraphina's face glowed with triumph as she stepped forward to meet him in the center of the circle. This was her moment, the culmination of everything she'd been raised to become. Our pack's alliance with the Blackthorn territory would secure our future for generations. I should have been happy for her. I should have felt proud. Instead, something twisted in my chest as I watched Darius take her offered hands. Something that tasted suspiciously like longing. Seraphina Ravencrest, his voice was low, rough around the edges like smoke and whiskey. It carried across the silent clearing with supernatural clarity. Do you accept this mate bond freely, knowing the duties and sacrifices required? I do, Seraphina's voice rang clear and confident. I accept you as my mate, my alpha, my destiny. The crowd held its breath. This was it, the moment where Darius would speak the sacred words that would bind them for eternity. The moment my sister would ascend to become the most powerful Luna in werewolf society. Darius's grip on her hands tightened. His dark eyes lifted to meet hers, and something shifted in his expression, something cold and final. I, Darius Blackthorn, Alpha King of the Northern Territories. Yes, I thought, my heart hammering against my ribs. Say it. Bind yourself to her. Make this real so I can stop this ridiculous fantasy. Reject you. The words hit the clearing like a physical blow. Seraphina's face went white as moonlight, her mouth falling open in shock. The assembled wolves erupted in gasps and horrified whispers. I reject you as my mate, Darius continued, his voice never wavering. You are not worthy to stand beside me. That's when Seraphina screamed. It wasn't the scream of a spoiled princess denied her prize. It was the sound of a soul being torn apart, raw and broken and utterly devastating. The mate bond, even partially formed, was being severed by force. The pain of rejection was said to be unbearable, like having your heart ripped from your chest while still beating. She collapsed to her knees, clutching her chest as sobs racked her perfect form. Her carefully arranged hair fell in tangled waves around her face, and the white silk of her ceremonial dress was already stained with tears and dirt. The pack erupted into chaos. Wolves shifted partially in their distress, growls and snarls filling the air as confusion and outrage took hold. My parents, Alpha Magnus and Luna Elena, stood frozen on the raised platform reserved for pack leadership, their faces masks of shock and humiliation. This wasn't just a rejection. It was a public execution of our family's honor. And yet, I couldn't look away from him. While everyone else was focused on Seraphina's breakdown, while my world was falling apart around us, Darius Blackthorn stood completely still in the center of it all. Unmoved. Unrepentant. His dark gaze swept across the chaos with the detached interest of a predator evaluating prey. Then, impossibly, his eyes found mine. The world stopped. I was hidden in the shadows 30 feet away, camouflaged by darkness and the twisted roots of the ancient oak. There was no way he should have been able to see me, let alone focus on me with such burning intensity. But he did. His gaze locked onto mine with the precision of an arrow finding its target, and suddenly I couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. Couldn't do anything but stare back at the Alpha King who had just destroyed my sister and somehow, in this moment of absolute catastrophe, was looking at me like I was the only thing in the world that mattered. Heat flooded my cheeks. My wolf, usually so quiet and submissive, stirred restlessly beneath my skin. The mate bond might be a myth to me. At 19, I'd never felt so much as a flutter of recognition for any male in our pack, but something was happening. Something that made my skin feel too tight and my heart race like I was running for my life. No, I told myself desperately. Not him. Not now. Not like this. Lyra. My mother's sharp voice cut through my paralysis. I jerked my gaze away from Darius to find Luna Elena striding toward my hiding spot, her face twisted with fury and shame. Get down from there this instant, she hissed in the mind link all wolves shared with their pack. How dare you hide up there like a coward while your sister suffers? Shame burned through me as I scrambled down from the oak's massive roots. She was right, of course. While Serafina was being publicly humiliated, I'd been having inappropriate thoughts about the man who'd caused it. What kind of sister was I? By the time I reached the ceremonial circle, Darius was gone. Vanished like smoke into the night, leaving only chaos in his wake. Serafina was being supported by our pack's healer, her sobs echoing across the clearing as wolves began to disperse in uncomfortable silence. This is a disaster, my father was saying to the gathered pack leaders, his voice tight with barely controlled rage. An insult that cannot stand. The Blackthorn Alliance is dead, and our daughter's reputation is ruined. Perhaps it's for the best, Luna Elena replied quietly, her arm around Serafina's trembling shoulders. If the Alpha King could be so cruel, maybe she's better off without him. But I caught the worry in her eyes, the way her gaze darted around the clearing at the other pack leaders. They were already reassessing, already calculating how this humiliation would affect our standing in the complex web of werewolf politics. The Ravencrest pack had just fallen several rungs down the ladder of power. And it was all because of him. The Alpha King with midnight eyes who had somehow looked straight through shadows to find me in the darkness. As my family helped Serafina toward the pack house, as the sacred clearing emptied of witnesses to our shame, I found myself glancing back toward the forest where Darius had disappeared. Part of me, a part one didn't want to acknowledge, hoped he was still out there. Still watching. Still seeing me when no one else ever had. What's wrong with me? I thought desperately. My sister's heart is broken, my family's honor is destroyed, and all I can think about is the way he looked at me. But as we walked through the midnight forest toward home, I couldn't shake the memory of those dark eyes. Or the certainty that this wasn't over. Whatever had passed between us in that moment, whatever impossible thing had stirred to life in the shadows of the oak, it was just the beginning. The Alpha King had rejected his perfect mate. And somehow, impossibly, I couldn't help but wonder why. Wanting to see what would happen next, subscribe to this channel to get to listen to more of our upcoming exciting stories. Click on the subscribe button now. Thank you. Chapter 2. The pack house felt like a tomb when we finally returned from the ceremonial grounds. Every shadow seemed heavier, every creak of the old timber frame more pronounced in the suffocating silence. Serafina hadn't spoken a word during the walk home, her sobs having given way to an eerie quiet that somehow felt more disturbing than her earlier breakdown. I helped guide her up the grand staircase to her suite, the Luna's quarters that would never be hers now, while our parents disappeared into father's study for what I could only assume would be hours of damage control. The other pack leaders would want answers. They'd want to know how Alpha Magnus had so catastrophically misjudged the Alpha King's intentions. They'd want to know what this meant for all of us. Sarah, I said softly as I settled her onto the velvet chaise by her window. The pet name from our childhood felt strange on my tongue now. We hadn't been close in years, how could we be, when she blazed like the sun while I remained perpetually in shadow? Can I get you anything? Tea? Something to eat? She turned to look at me, and I sucked in a sharp breath. Her face, so perfect and ethereal just hours ago, was ravaged by grief. Her arctic blue eyes were swollen and red-rimmed, her golden hair matted and tangled. But it was the expression in those eyes that made my blood run cold. There was no devastation there. No heartbreak. No shattered dreams or wounded pride. There was rage. Pure, calculating rage that burned like ice. He'll pay for this, she whispered, her voice hoarse but steady. They'll all pay. A chill ran down my spine. Sarah, what are you talking about? Who will pay? She stood abruptly, moving to her massive mahogany dresser with jerky, agitated movements. Darius Blackthorne thinks he can humiliate me? Destroy everything I've worked for? She yanked open drawer after drawer, tossing delicate silk undergarments and jewelry aside with violent carelessness. He has no idea what he's dealing with. Serafina, you're scaring me. I moved closer, trying to catch her hands as she continued her frantic search. I know tonight was devastating, but maybe. Devastating? She spun to face me, and for a moment I saw something inhuman flicker in her eyes. Something that made my wolf, or whatever passed for my wolf in my broken body, cower in instinctive fear. This wasn't devastating, Lyra. This was war. She found what she was looking for at the back of her bottom drawer, an ornate wooden box carved with symbols I didn't recognize. Ancient symbols that seemed to writhe and shift when I looked at them directly. What is that? I breathed. Serafina's lips curved in a smile that had nothing to do with happiness. Insurance. She opened the box, revealing vials of viscous liquid in colors that hurt to look at, midnight black, poisonous green, and something that shifted between silver and gold like trapped moonlight. Did you really think I'd leave my future to chance, little sister? That I'd trust my destiny to the whims of some arrogant alpha? The air in the room grew thick and oppressive. Those vials, they reeked of something wrong. Something that made every instinct I possessed scream warnings. Sarah, those aren't, I swallowed hard. Those aren't natural, are they? Natural? She laughed, a sound like breaking glass. Nothing about power is natural, Lyra. You have to take it. You have to make it yours. She selected one of the black vials, holding it up to catch the moonlight streaming through her window. I've spent years cultivating relationships with the right people. Learning the old ways. The forbidden ways. Witchcraft. The word hung unspoken between us, but I could feel the truth of it in my bones. Serafina had been dabbling in witch magic, a crime punishable by death in werewolf society. Magic and wolf nature were fundamentally incompatible. It corrupted the soul, twisted the wolf spirit until nothing pure remained. You could be executed for this, I whispered. If father found out, if the council. The council. She spat the words like they tasted foul. Those old fools cling to traditions that make us weak. They don't understand that evolution requires adaptation. That survival requires sacrifice. She moved to her vanity, where silver implements lay scattered across the marble surface. A ceremonial dagger, its blade etched with more of those writhing symbols. Herbs I couldn't identify. A chalice that looked far too old to belong to anyone in our pack. What are you planning to do? My voice came out smaller than I intended. I'm going to give Darius Blackthorne exactly what he deserves. Serafina began arranging her supplies with practiced efficiency. A mate bond forged in blood and magic is unbreakable. He can reject the moon goddess's will all he wants, but he cannot reject mine. Horror crawled up my throat like bile. You're talking about a forced bond. Sarah, that's not just illegal, it's an abomination. The wolf forced into such a bond goes mad. They lose themselves completely. Then perhaps the great Alpha King should have thought of that before he chose to humiliate me in front of every pack leader in the territory. Her hands were steady as she began crushing herbs with mortar and pestle, but I could see the tension in her shoulders, the way her jaw clenched with each grinding motion. I offered him everything, my beauty, my bloodline, my pack's alliance. I would have been the perfect Luna, given him strong heirs, managed his territory with grace and intelligence. Instead, he threw it all away to make some kind of point. Maybe he just didn't feel the mate bond, I said desperately. Maybe the moon goddess intended someone else for him, and he was being honest about. The moon goddess? Seraphina's laughter was bitter and sharp. The moon goddess abandoned me the day she made you wolfless, Lyra. The day she cursed our family with the shame of a broken daughter. If she cared about justice, about rewarding the worthy, you never would have been born. The words hit me like a physical blow. I'd always known my lack of wolf form was a source of shame for our family, but hearing it said so bluntly, by my own sister, made something inside me crack. I didn't choose to be wolfless, I whispered. No, but you chose to stay that way. She looked up from her grinding, her eyes cold and clinical. Do you think I don't know about your little midnight excursions? Your desperate attempts to force a shift that will never come? You've been trying for years to fix whatever's broken inside you, but you lack the courage to do what's truly necessary. She gestured to the vials, to the implements of dark magic. This could fix you, you know. Make you everything you've always dreamed of being. But you're too weak, too concerned with playing by rules written by people who see you as less than nothing. For a moment, just a moment, I felt tempted. The promise of finally having a wolf form, of finally belonging, was almost overwhelming. But then I looked at my sister's face, at the cruel satisfaction gleaming in her eyes, and the temptation died. I won't become a monster just to fit in. No, she agreed, turning back to her work. You'll stay a pathetic half-breed instead. At least you're consistent. A knock on the door interrupted whatever cutting response I might have made. We both froze as our father's voice carried through the thick oak. Seraphina? Lyra? Are you both in there? I moved toward the door, but Seraphina's hand shot out to grip my wrist with bruising force. Her nails, I noticed with a shock, had grown into claws, but not wolf claws. Something else. Something wrong. Not a word, she hissed. About any of this. Do you understand me? I nodded, not trusting my voice. She released me and quickly swept her magical supplies back into their box, shoving it under her bed with practiced efficiency. By the time I opened the door, she had arranged herself back on the chaise, the picture of wounded innocence. Father? I stepped aside to let him enter, noting the deep lines of stress etched around his eyes. There's been a development. Alpha Magnus looked between us, his expression grim. Alpha King Darius is here. He's requested a private audience. Seraphina sat up straighter, hope and calculation warring in her expression. He's come to apologize. To explain himself. I don't think so. Father's voice was careful, controlled in the way that meant he was struggling with his own emotions. He specifically requested to speak with our family. All of us. Including Lyra. Me? I blinked in surprise. Why would he want to speak with me? That's what we intend to find out. Father's gaze sharpened. Both of you will come downstairs. You'll be respectful, you'll follow my lead, and you will not do anything to further embarrass this pack. Are we clear? Crystal, Seraphina murmured, but I caught the flash of something predatory in her smile. We followed Father down the grand staircase to the main parlor, where Mother was already waiting with barely concealed anxiety. She'd changed out of her ceremonial robes into a simple but elegant day dress, her graying blonde hair pulled back in a severe chignon. The picture of composed pack leadership, if you ignored the way her hands trembled as she smoothed non-existent wrinkles from her skirt. Alpha King Darius stood with his back to us, staring out the massive picture window that overlooked our territory. He'd changed as well, Gone was the formal ceremonial attire, replaced by dark jeans and a black sweater that emphasized the powerful breadth of his shoulders. His hair was damp, as if he'd recently showered, and I caught a hint of cedar and rain on the air. He turned as we entered, and once again I felt that same electric jolt I'd experienced in the ceremonial circle. His dark eyes swept over our family, lingering on each face in turn, but I felt the weight of his attention like a physical touch when his gaze settled on me. Alpha Magnus. Luna Elena. His voice was calm, controlled, giving nothing away. Thank you for seeing me. Your Majesty. Father inclined his head respectfully, though I could see the tension in his posture. To what do we owe the honor? Darius's mouth curved in something that wasn't quite a smile. I think we both know tonight's events require clarification. If you've come to apologize to my daughter, Mother began, her protective instincts overriding diplomatic protocol, then you should know. I haven't. The words were quiet but absolute. I've come because there are things about tonight that require explanation. Things that go beyond a simple mate rejection. Serafina stepped forward, her chin lifted in defiant pride. If you think you can justify the humiliation you subjected me to. I think, Darius interrupted, his gaze never leaving her face, that you and I both know exactly why I rejected you, Serafina Ravencrest. The question is whether your family is aware of your extracurricular activities. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Serafina's face went white, then flushed with anger. I have no idea what you're implying. Don't you? Darius stepped closer, and I caught that scent again, cedar and rain, but underneath it something else. Something wild and dangerous and completely compelling. The scent of dark magic clings to you like smoke. Did you really think you could hide it? That I wouldn't recognize what you've become? Oh, God. He knew. Somehow, the Alpha King knew about Serafina's dabbling in witchcraft. That's impossible, Father said sharply. My daughter would never. Your daughter, Darius said softly, reeks of corruption. Of spells and potions and bargains made with beings that have no business in our world. His eyes remained fixed on Serafina's face, watching as her carefully constructed mask began to crumble. Tell me, how long have you been working with the Shadowmere Coven? How many of our laws have you broken in your quest for power? You're lying. But Serafina's voice shook, and I saw her hands clench into fists at her sides. You're trying to deflect from your own cruelty by making wild accusations. Am I? Darius pulled something from his pocket, a small glass vial filled with viscous black liquid. Identical to the ones I'd seen in Serafina's room just minutes ago. Then perhaps you can explain how this came to be in your possession? How a vial of corruptor's blood found its way into the ceremonial circle tonight. The silence that followed was deafening. Mother's face had gone ashen, while Father looked like he'd been struck by lightning. Sarah? I whispered. What is he talking about? But I already knew. The forced mate bond she'd spoken of upstairs, she'd been planning to use it tonight. During the ceremony itself. You were going to drug me, Darius continued, his voice deadly quiet. Force a blood bond that would have overridden my free will. Made me your mindless puppet. He stepped closer to Serafina, who backed against the mantelpiece like a cornered animal. The only reason you failed was because I could smell the corruption on you from across the ceremonial circle. Did you really think centuries of experience hadn't taught me to recognize the stench of dark magic? She wouldn't, Mother breathed. Serafina, tell him he's wrong. Tell him you would never. Never what? Serafina's composure finally cracked completely, her beautiful face twisting with fury and desperation. Never take what should have been mine by right? Never refuse to accept the scraps thrown to me by men who think they're gods. She laughed, high and wild. You want to know the truth? Fine. Yes, I've been working with the Shadowmere Coven. Yes, I've learned to harness forces beyond your precious moon goddess's reach. And yes, I was going to make sure Darius Blackthorn accepted our mate bond whether he wanted to or not. Father reeled back like she'd slapped him. Serafina, how could you? Do you have any idea what you've done? What you've brought down on our entire pack. I've tried to secure our future, she screamed. Something you were apparently too weak to do yourself. Enough. Darius's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. Alpha Magnus, your daughter has committed crimes against werewolf law that carry a death sentence. The only reason I'm not executing her right now is that she's clearly been corrupted beyond rational thought. She needs help, not punishment. Help? Serafina whirled to face him, her eyes blazing with inhuman light. I don't need help. I need what you stole from me tonight. What you had no right to take. I took nothing that was ever yours. You took my destiny. My rightful place. Your delusions, Darius finished quietly. The moon goddess chooses our mates, Serafina. Not our ambitions. Not our sense of entitlement. And she certainly didn't choose you for me. Then who? The question burst out of her like a physical force. Who is she supposed to be, this perfect mate of yours? Because I've seen every eligible female in the territory, and none of them are worthy of. Darius's gaze shifted, suddenly and completely, to me. The world stopped. Everyone in the room followed his look, turning to stare at me with varying degrees of shock and confusion. I felt heat flood my cheeks, felt my heart begin to race with terrifying intensity. No, I whispered. That's not. I can't. I'm wolfless. Are you? Darius asked softly. Something in his tone, in the way he was looking at me, made my skin prickle with sudden awareness. Made that quiet, submissive thing inside me that I'd always assumed was a broken wolf stir restlessly. Of course she is, Serafina snarled. She's been a disappointment her entire life. A shameful secret our family has had to hide. You can't possibly be suggesting. I'm not suggesting anything. Darius's voice remained calm, but I could see something predatory awakening in his dark eyes. I'm simply observing that scent can be deceiving. That sometimes what we assume is absence is actually suppression. What does that mean? I asked, my voice barely audible. Instead of answering, he took a step toward me. Then another. My family seemed frozen in place as the Alpha King approached me with the focused intensity of a hunter stalking prey. It means, he said quietly, that you smell like moonlight and secrets, Lyra Ravencrest. Like power wrapped in shadows and bound by shame. He was close enough now that I could see gold flecks in his dark eyes, could feel the heat radiating from his skin. It means your wolf isn't broken. It's hidden. That's impossible, Father breathed. Is it? Darius never looked away from me. Tell me, Lyra, what happens when you get angry? Really, truly furious? What happens when your emotions spike beyond your ability to control them? I opened my mouth to answer, to tell him that nothing happened because nothing ever happened to me, when Serafina's voice cut across the room like a whip. Stop this ridiculous charade. She stalked toward us, her composure completely shattered. She's nobody. Nothing. A wolfless freak who's spent her entire life being a burden on this family. If you think she's some kind of hidden treasure, you're even more deluded than I thought. Sarah, please, I whispered, backing toward the wall as my sister advanced on me with fury blazing in her eyes. Please what? Please stop telling the truth. She was close enough now that I could see the corruption Darius had mentioned, could see the way her irises seemed to shift and swirl with unnatural colors. You're pathetic, Lyra. You always have been. A broken, useless, wolfless. Stop. The word came out harder than I'd intended, backed by something I'd never felt before. Serafina laughed mockingly. Or what? You'll cry? You'll run away like you always do? Face it, sister, you're nothing. You've always been nothing, and you always will be nothing. No amount of wishful thinking from the great Alpha King is going to change. I said stop. The shout erupted from somewhere deep inside me, carrying with it a force I'd never experienced. The windows rattled in their frames. The lights flickered. And something inside my chest, something that had been sleeping for 19 long years, finally awakened. Power flooded through me like liquid fire, racing along my veins and setting every nerve ending ablaze. My bones began to shift, to elongate, to reshape themselves with audible cracks that should have been agonizing but felt like the sweetest relief. Finally, a voice whispered in my mind. A voice that was mine but also not mine. Finally, we can be free. My wolf. After 19 years of silence, my wolf was finally speaking. The transformation hit me like a tidal wave, overwhelming and unstoppable. I fell to my knees as my spine curved, as my hands became claws, as my face elongated into a muzzle. Somewhere in the distance, I heard my mother scream. Heard my father curse. Heard Seraphina's shocked gasp. But all of that faded to background noise as my wolf form finally, fully manifested. When the shifting stopped, when the fire in my veins settled to a warm, steady burn, I opened eyes that I knew would no longer be the same boring brown they'd always been. The silence in the room was absolute. I looked down at myself, expecting to see the small, unremarkable wolf form I'd always imagined I might have. Instead, I saw something that made my breath catch. My fur wasn't brown or gray or even the silver that ran in our bloodline. It was white, pure, luminous white that seemed to glow with its own inner light. My paws were larger than they should have been, my form more substantial. And when I caught my reflection in the darkened window, I saw eyes that blazed like captured starlight. Impossible, Father whispered. Luna wolf, Mother breathed, her voice full of awe and terror. She's a Luna wolf. I didn't understand what that meant, but I could see the shock on everyone's faces. The fear. The recognition of something they'd never expected to see. All except Darius. When I turned to look at him, I found him watching me with something that looked suspiciously like satisfaction. Not impossible, he said quietly. Just rare. Luna wolves haven't been seen in over 3 centuries. His dark eyes met mine, and I felt that same electric connection I'd experienced in the ceremonial circle. They're born to rule, Lyra. Born to stand beside alpha kings and lead with power that comes directly from the moon goddess herself. Mate. The word whispered through my mind in my wolf's voice, clear and certain and absolutely terrifying. Because as I stared at Darius Blackthorn, as I felt the mate bond snap into place with the force of destiny itself, I finally understood why he'd rejected my sister. The moon goddess hadn't chosen Seraphina to be his Luna. She'd chosen me. If you're still listening to this story up to this point, why don't you subscribe to this channel to continue getting impactful daily stories like this? We would be most grateful if you can do that to help boost this video to reach everyone. Thank you. Chapter 3. The transformation back to human form was excruciating. Where my first shift had felt like awakening from a long dream, returning to my human shape was like being torn apart and reassembled by clumsy hands. I collapsed onto the Persian rug, naked and shaking, my skin hypersensitive to every texture, every breath of air. Someone, Mother, I think, draped a blanket around my shoulders, but I could barely process the gesture through the overwhelming flood of new sensations. Everything was different. Sharper. More intense. I could hear conversations happening 3 rooms away, could smell the lingering scent of fierce sweat on my father's skin, could sense the rapid flutter of my mother's heartbeat. And underneath it all, threading through every other sensation like a golden cord, was him. Darius's scent. His presence. The undeniable pull of the mate bond that had snapped into place the moment my wolf recognized his. This changes everything, Father was saying, his voice carefully controlled but edged with panic. A Luna wolf. God Almighty, do you have any idea what the other packs will do when they find out? What the council will demand? They'll want to study her, Mother whispered. Test her. Use her. Her protective instincts had kicked in despite years of disappointment in my wolfless state. We have to keep this secret. At least until we understand what it means. Secret? Seraphina's laugh was bitter and sharp. Look at her. Look at what she's become. You think anyone with functioning eyes won't notice that glow? That presence? Her voice dropped to a venomous hiss. She's everything I was supposed to be. Everything I deserved to be. I finally managed to lift my head, still wrapped in the blanket, and met my sister's gaze. The corruption Darius had mentioned was more visible now, as if my awakening had somehow enhanced my ability to see the darkness that clung to her. Her beautiful face was twisted with envy and rage, but there was something else there too. Something calculating. Sarah, I began, my voice hoarse from screaming, I never wanted. Don't. She held up a hand, her fingernails still bearing traces of those inhuman claws I'd noticed earlier. Don't you dare tell me you never wanted this. Every wolfless night, every family gathering where you hid in the shadows, every moment of shame and disappointment, you wanted this more than anything. She wasn't wrong. But the guilt in her words felt like acid in my chest. The question now, Darius said quietly, drawing everyone's attention back to him, is what we do about it. His dark eyes remained fixed on me with an intensity that made my newly awakened wolf pace restlessly beneath my skin. A Luna wolf changes the entire balance of power in our world. There will be those who want to use her, others who will try to destroy her, and still others who will attempt to claim her for themselves. She's under the protection of the Ravencrest pack, Father said firmly. Whatever she is, wherever this power came from, she's my daughter. Is she? Darius's question was soft but pointed. Because Luna wolves don't just appear randomly, Magnus. They're born of ancient bloodlines, chosen by the moon goddess for specific purposes. If Lyra carries this power, there are things about her heritage you don't know. Things that will come to light whether you want them to or not. A chill ran down my spine. What do you mean? Instead of answering directly, Darius approached me with that same predatory grace I'd noticed before. But now, with my wolf senses fully awakened, I could feel the power that radiated from him like heat from a forge. It was overwhelming and comforting and terrifying all at once. Stand up, he said simply. I clutched the blanket tighter around myself. I don't have any clothes. Stand up, Lyra. His voice carried the unmistakable weight of an alpha command, but there was something else underneath it. A gentle coaxing that spoke directly to my wolf rather than forcing my compliance. Slowly, carefully, I rose to my feet. The blanket slipped slightly, and I had to fight the urge to cover myself more thoroughly. But Darius wasn't looking at my body with any kind of inappropriate interest. Instead, his gaze was focused on something else entirely. Hold out your hands, he instructed. Palms up. I did as he asked, confused but oddly trusting. The moment my palms were fully exposed, gasps echoed around the room. My skin was glowing. Not dramatically, not like something from a fantasy movie, but with a subtle luminescence that seemed to pulse in rhythm with my heartbeat. Silver light traced patterns across my palms, symbols that looked almost like writing in a language I didn't recognize. Luna marks, Mother breathed. Dear God, she has Luna marks. What are Luna marks? I asked, staring at my hands in fascination and growing alarm. Ancient symbols, Darius explained, his voice taking on the cadence of someone reciting old knowledge. They appear on Luna wolves when they first manifest their power. Each mark represents a different aspect of lunar magic: protection, healing, prophecy, battle fury. His eyes met mine. I've only seen them in historical texts. They haven't been witnessed in the living world for over 300 years. Why now? Father demanded. Why her? Why tonight? Darius was quiet for a long moment, his gaze still fixed on my glowing palms. Because the old powers are stirring. The balance that has held our world stable for centuries is shifting, and the moon goddess is preparing her champions. He looked up at my face, and I saw something that might have been regret in his dark eyes. There are forces moving against us, Magnus. Forces that your daughter's corruption has given access to things they shouldn't possess. His gaze shifted to Seraphina, who had gone very still and very pale. What forces? I asked, though I had a sick feeling I already knew. The Shadowmere Coven isn't just a group of rogue witches, Darius said grimly. They're servants of something much older and infinitely more dangerous. They've been working for decades to weaken the barriers between our world and theirs, using corrupted werewolves as anchors for their power. His voice hardened. Your sister has been helping them, knowingly or not. That's not true, Seraphina said quickly, but I could hear the lie in her voice. I only wanted to secure my rightful place. By making bargains with beings that feast on werewolf souls, Darius finished coldly. By allowing them to use your corruption as a gateway into our territory. He turned back to my parents, his expression grave. The rejection ceremony tonight wasn't just about personal choice. It was about preventing the Shadowmere from gaining access to the most powerful pack alliance in the territory. If I had accepted a mate bond with Seraphina, her corruption would have spread through the Blackthorn bloodline. We would have become willing vessels for forces that want to see our entire species enslaved or destroyed. The room fell silent except for the sound of Seraphina's harsh breathing. I could see her calculating, weighing her options, and something in her expression made my newly awakened instincts scream warnings. The sun will rise soon, Darius continued, apparently oblivious to my sister's growing agitation. I need to return to my territory before the other pack leaders realize I'm here. But this conversation is far from over. His gaze found mine again. Lyra, your awakening changes everything. The power you carry makes you both invaluable and incredibly dangerous. You'll need training. Guidance. Protection. From who? I asked. From me. The words hung in the air like a challenge. If you're willing. Father stepped forward, his alpha instincts bristling at the implied threat to his pack hierarchy. My daughter will be trained by our own pack shamans. Your pack shamans have never dealt with Luna wolf power, Darius interrupted smoothly. They wouldn't know how to help her control abilities that could level entire territories if mishandled. His eyes never left mine. I've spent my life studying the old bloodlines, the ancient powers. I'm the only one qualified to help her. And what would you want in return? Mother asked suspiciously. Darius's smile was sharp and knowing. Nothing you wouldn't eventually give willingly. The implication hung heavy in the air. He was talking about the mate bond, about claiming me as his Luna. About taking me away from everything I'd ever known. I need time to think, I said quickly. This is all too much, too fast. I've been wolfless for 19 years, and now you're telling me I'm some kind of ancient weapon? That my sister has been consorting with dark forces? That my destiny is tied to yours? I shook my head, the blanket slipping again as I gestured. I can't make decisions like this while I'm still figuring out how to exist in my own skin. Darius nodded slowly. Time. Yes, that's reasonable. But not too much time, Lyra. The forces your sister has awakened won't wait for you to be comfortable with your power. What's that supposed to mean? Seraphina demanded, but there was something brittle in her voice now. It means, Darius said softly, that you've painted a target on your entire family. The Shadowmere don't tolerate failure, and they certainly don't tolerate exposure. They'll be coming for you, Seraphina. And when they do, everyone you love will be in danger. As if summoned by his words, the lights in the house suddenly flickered and died. Emergency lighting kicked in a moment later, casting everything in an eerie red glow that made shadows dance across the walls like living things. What was that? Mother whispered. Darius was already moving, his body shifting into a defensive stance. Power surge. Someone's trying to breach the pack's territorial wards. His head snapped toward the windows, his nostrils flaring. Something's coming. That's when I smelled it too, a scent like sulfur and rotting meat, like death and decay and unnatural corruption. It made my wolf recoil in instinctive disgust and terror. Shadowmere, I breathed. How is that possible? Father demanded, moving to the weapons cabinet he kept hidden behind false panels. Our wards are some of the strongest in the territory. Not against invited guests, Darius said grimly, his gaze fixed on Seraphina. The corruption in your daughter's soul creates a permanent breach. They don't need to break the wards, they can walk right through them. Seraphina's face had gone ashen. I didn't know, she whispered. They never told me. Of course they didn't. Darius's voice was almost pitying. Why would they warn the weapon they were planning to use? The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees in as many seconds. Frost began forming on the windows despite the late summer heat outside. And somewhere in the distance, I could hear something howling, but it wasn't the sound any natural wolf would make. Everyone upstairs, Father commanded, his alpha voice brooking no argument. Now. But before any of us could move, the front door exploded inward. What came through wasn't human, wasn't werewolf, and wasn't entirely of this world. It stood 7 feet tall with elongated limbs and fingers that ended in razor-sharp claws. Its face was a mockery of human features, with too many teeth and eyes that burned with sickly green fire. When it spoke, its voice was like grinding stone. Seraphina Ravencrest. You have failed to deliver what was promised. The compact must be fulfilled. My sister stumbled backward, terror replacing calculation in her expression. I tried. The ceremony was ruined, but I can still. The Alpha King was never the true prize, the creature interrupted. We required access to the Ravencrest bloodline, yes. But not through a corrupted vessel. Its burning gaze swept the room and landed on me. The Luna Wolf. She will serve our purposes far better than her tainted sister. No. My wolf's voice was fierce and protective. We will not be used. Power flooded through me, not the overwhelming rush of my first transformation, but something more controlled. More purposeful. The Luna marks on my palms blazed to life, silver light filling the room with intensity that made the creature recoil. You cannot have her. Darius stepped between me and the Shadowmere spawn, his own power radiating outward like a shield. She is under the protection of the Alpha King. The creature laughed, a sound like breaking bones. Your protection means nothing here, wolf pup. The girl carries ancient power in her veins, power that belongs to us by right of first claim. First claim? I found my voice despite the terror clawing at my throat. What does that mean? It means, Seraphina said quietly, her voice hollow with horror and understanding, that my bargains weren't just about gaining power. They were about paying a debt. She looked at me with something that might have been remorse. A debt that dates back to our great-grandmother's time. To the last Luna wolf in our bloodline. The room spun around me as the implications hit home. You sold me. Before I was even born, before anyone knew what I was, you sold me to them. The compact was made long before I was born, she whispered. I thought it was just a family legend, a cautionary tale about the dangers of dark magic. I didn't know it was real until they contacted me. Until they offered to help me claim my rightful place as Darius's mate. In exchange for your sister, the creature confirmed, taking a step closer despite the silver light that continued to pour from my hands. One Luna wolf, freely given, to settle the debt of another. It is the old law. It cannot be broken. The hell it can't, Darius snarled, and for the first time since I'd met him, his careful control slipped entirely. Power exploded from him, not silver like mine, but midnight black shot through with veins of gold. His eyes blazed with inhuman fury, and when he spoke again, his voice carried the weight of absolute authority. I am Darius Blackthorn, Alpha King of the Northern Territories, and I claim this woman as my mate. By right of blood, by right of bond, by right of the moon goddess herself, she is mine to protect. The mate bond that had been thrumming quietly in the background since my transformation suddenly blazed to life with the force of his declaration. It wrapped around my heart, my soul, my very essence, binding us together with chains stronger than steel. The Shadowmere creature hissed in frustration. A claiming mate in fear and desperation holds no power. Doesn't it? I stepped forward, my voice stronger than I felt. The Luna marks on my palms pulsed brighter, and I could feel ancient knowledge flowing through me, memories that weren't my own, power that had been sleeping in my bloodline for generations. Because I claim him right back. The words seemed to come from somewhere deeper than conscious thought, speaking truths I hadn't known I understood. I, Lyra of the Luna bloodline, daughter of moonlight and shadow, choose Darius Blackthorn as my mate. By right of blood, by right of power, by right of love freely given, he is mine to protect. The air crackled with energy as our mutual claiming took hold. Silver and black power swirled together, creating something entirely new and infinitely stronger than either of us could have managed alone. The Shadowmere creature took several steps back, its burning eyes wide with something that looked like fear. "This is not over," it hissed. "The debt remains. The compact cannot be broken by mere sentiment." "Then come and collect," Darius challenged, his hand finding mine and intertwining our fingers. The moment our skin touched, the combined power doubled, tripled, became something that made the very foundations of the house tremble. "But know that you'll face both of us. And we are not the weak, divided targets you were expecting." For a moment, the creature seemed to consider its options. Then, with a sound like tearing fabric, it simply vanished, leaving behind only the lingering stench of sulfur and the memory of burning green eyes. The silence that followed was deafening. "Well," Mother said finally, her voice shaky but determined. "I suppose we should discuss wedding arrangements." Despite everything, the terror, the revelations, the magical compact that apparently made me property of interdimensional creatures, I found myself laughing. Laughing until tears streamed down my face, until my sides ached, until the hysteria gave way to something that felt almost like hope. Because for the first time in my 19 years of existence, I wasn't invisible. I wasn't broken. I wasn't the shameful secret my family had to hide. I was a Luna wolf. I was mated to the most powerful alpha in the territory. And I was apparently the key to a supernatural war that had been brewing for decades. It should have been terrifying. Instead, as I looked into Darius's dark eyes and felt the mate bond humming between us like a living thing, I felt ready for whatever came next. Even if it meant facing down the forces of darkness themselves. Even if it meant choosing between the family I'd always known and the destiny I'd never imagined. Even if it meant becoming someone entirely new. Because the broken wolf was gone. And the Luna had finally awakened. If you're still listening to this story up to this point, why don't you subscribe to this channel to continue getting impactful daily stories like this? We would be most grateful if you can do that to help boost this video to reach everyone. Thank you. Chapter 4. The full moon rose like a malevolent eye, casting everything in stark silver light that made shadows dance with unnatural life. I stood at my bedroom window, watching the forest that bordered our territory, unable to shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. It had been 3 days since the Shadowmere creature's attack, 3 days since Darius and I had claimed each other in a desperate bid for survival, and the mate bond thrummed constantly beneath my skin like a second heartbeat. He'd returned to his territory to coordinate defenses, but promised to come back before the full moon reached its peak. Luna wolves, he'd explained, were most vulnerable during the full moon, when their power was strongest but also most unstable. Without proper guidance, a newly awakened Luna could level entire cities in a fit of uncontrolled rage. The thought should have terrified me. Instead, I found myself oddly calm as I traced the Luna marks on my palms, watching them pulse with soft silver light in rhythm with the moon's ascent. The ancient knowledge that had flooded through me during the claiming ceremony felt more natural now, like recalling half-forgotten dreams. But something was still wrong. A soft knock on my door interrupted my brooding. "Come in," I called, expecting Mother with another cup of her calming tea. She'd been hovering anxiously since my transformation, as if afraid I might spontaneously combust. Instead, Serafina stepped into the room. My sister looked different than she had 3 days ago. Where before the corruption had been a subtle wrongness around the edges, now it seemed to permeate her entire being. Her golden hair had lost its lustrous shine, taking on a brittle, straw-like quality. Her skin, once flawless and radiant, now had a grayish pallor that made her look like she was slowly dying from the inside out. But it was her eyes that made my wolf recoil in instinctive terror. They burned with that same sickly green fire I'd seen in the Shadowmere creature's gaze. "Sarah?" I backed toward the window, my hand instinctively moving to the emergency beacon Darius had given me. "What are you doing here? Shouldn't you be resting?" "The healer said the corruption was draining your strength." "The healer doesn't know anything," she said quietly, closing the door behind her with a soft click. None of them do. They see what they want to see, the golden daughter fallen from grace, corrupted by forces beyond her control. Her lips curved in a smile that held no warmth. They don't see the truth. What truth? But even as I asked, I was backing further away from her, my newly awakened senses screaming warnings. That I'd been planning this for years. She moved deeper into the room with predatory grace, and I noticed that her fingernails had elongated into those inhuman claws again. That every spell, every bargain, every careful manipulation has been building toward tonight. The temperature in the room dropped so suddenly that my breath misted in the air. Frost began forming on the windows, and somewhere in the distance, I heard the mournful howl of wolves in distress. The full moon, I whispered, understanding flooding through me like ice water. You're using the full moon to amplify your power. Not just my power, she corrected, her voice taking on that grinding stone quality I'd heard from the Shadowmere creature. Our power. Do you really think your transformation was an accident, dear sister? That your wolf just happened to awaken at the exact moment when it would be most useful to me? Horror crawled up my throat. What did you do? I've been feeding you corruption for months, she said conversationally, as if discussing the weather. Tiny doses, carefully measured, designed not to destroy your wolf but to prepare it. Make it more receptive to external influence. Her smile widened, revealing teeth that were far too sharp. Every meal I cooked for you, every cup of tea I brought to your room when you were feeling sick, every sisterly gesture of care, they were all investments in this moment. My legs gave out, and I collapsed onto the edge of my bed. That's impossible. I would have smelled it, sensed it. Would you? She laughed, the sound like breaking glass. You've spent your entire life believing you were broken, wolfless, less than nothing. When strange things started happening, enhanced senses, moments of unusual strength, dreams of silver light, you dismissed them as wishful thinking. You never once considered that your wolf wasn't broken. It was being systematically suppressed. The room spun around me as memories crashed together like colliding waves. The nights when I'd felt strangely energetic after drinking Seraphina's special tea. The way I'd sometimes caught scents or sounds that shouldn't have been possible for a wolfless girl. The dreams of running through moonlit forests that I'd attributed to longing rather than repressed instinct. You've been poisoning me, I breathed. Conditioning you, she corrected. The Shadowmere don't want a broken Luna wolf, they want one that can be controlled. One whose power can be harvested and redirected. Her eyes blazed brighter, and I could see veins of green light pulsing beneath her skin. Tonight, under the full moon, when your power reaches its peak, I'm going to drain every drop of Luna essence from your body. And then I'll finally become what I was always meant to be. Terror and rage warred in my chest, but underneath both was a growing sense of sick betrayal. How long? My voice came out as barely a whisper. How long have you been planning to murder me? Murder? She tilted her head, considering. Such a harsh word. I prefer to think of it as redistribution. Your power will live on through me, serving a higher purpose than you could ever achieve on your own. What higher purpose? Serving creatures that want to enslave our entire species? Serving the natural order. Her composure cracked for the first time, revealing the desperate hunger underneath. Do you have any idea what it's like, Lyra? Being born first, being raised as the heir, being groomed for greatness your entire life, only to watch it all slip away because of cosmic accident? Because some ancient prophecy decided you were more worthy than me? Prophecy? The word hit me like a physical blow. What prophecy? But before she could answer, a new sound reached my ears, howls of pain and terror coming from downstairs. Not just any wolves. My parents. I bolted for the door, but Seraphina moved faster than should have been possible, her clawed hand wrapping around my throat and slamming me back against the wall. Too late, she hissed, her face inches from mine. I've been dosing them too, you see. Not with the carefully measured corruption I gave you, with pure Shadowmere poison. It's been eating away at their wolf essence for weeks, making them weaker, more susceptible. Tonight, as the moon reaches its peak, it will finish the job. Let me go. I clawed at her hand, but her grip was like iron. The Luna marks on my palms blazed to life, silver light flaring between us, but Serafina only laughed. Your power is already responding to my call, she said with satisfaction. Feel it, sister. Feel how eager it is to join with mine. The corruption in your system recognizes its master. And she was right. I could feel something dark and hungry stirring in response to her proximity, something that whispered seductive promises of power and dominion. It wrapped around my wolf-like chains, promising to make me stronger if I just let go. No. My wolf's voice cut through the seductive darkness like a blade. We are not hers to command. Power exploded from me, not the controlled silver light I'd been learning to manage, but something wilder and infinitely more dangerous. Serafina was hurled across the room, crashing through my antique dresser with bone-jarring force. I didn't wait to see if she was hurt. I ran. The main floor of the house was a war zone. Furniture had been overturned, windows shattered, and scorch marks blackened the walls where supernatural fire had burned. But it was the smell that made my knees buckle, blood and death and the lingering stench of dark magic. I found my parents in father's study. They lay together on the Persian rug, their bodies twisted in agony, their faces gray with the pallor of death. But it was their eyes that would haunt me forever, wide with terror and pain, but also with a desperate love that had endured until their final breath. No, I whispered, falling to my knees beside them. No, no, no. I pressed my hands to father's chest, pouring silver light into him, trying to restart his heart through sheer force of will. But there was nothing there, no spark of life to kindle, no wolf essence to restore. The poison had consumed everything, leaving only empty shells behind. They didn't suffer long. Serafina's voice came from behind me, casual and conversational. The final dose was almost merciful, really. Much kinder than what the Shadowmere had originally planned. I turned slowly, tears streaming down my face, to find my sister standing in the doorway. Her crash through the dresser had left her clothes torn and bloodied, but she seemed entirely unaffected by what should have been crippling injuries. Why? The word came out broken, barely human. They loved you. They gave you everything. Why? Because they were weak, she said simply. Because they represented everything that's wrong with our kind, blind loyalty to outdated traditions, submission to cosmic forces we don't understand, acceptance of limitations that should be transcended. She stepped into the room, and I could see that the green veins under her skin had spread, creating a network of corruption that pulsed with inhuman light. I needed their essence to complete the ritual. Their deaths will power the spell that binds your Luna force to mine. Rage bloomed in my chest like a dark flower. Not the clean anger of righteous fury, but something deeper and infinitely more dangerous. Something that tasted of moonlight and madness and the kind of justice that left nothing but ashes in its wake. You killed them, I said, my voice eerily calm despite the storm raging inside me. You killed our parents for power. I did what was necessary. You killed them. The shout erupted from somewhere deeper than my human throat, carrying with it a force that shattered every remaining window in the house. The Luna marks on my palms blazed so brightly that they burned away my sleeves, and I could feel my bones beginning to shift as something vast and terrible stirred to life inside me. But this wasn't the controlled transformation I'd experienced before. This was something primal and apocalyptic, something that had been sleeping in my bloodline since the world was young. The Destroyer, a voice whispered in my mind, not my wolf's voice, but something infinitely older. The Luna who brings endings. The silver death that cleanses corruption from the world. Power flooded through me like liquid starlight, rewriting my very DNA as it passed. My human form dissolved, but what took its place wasn't the beautiful silver wolf I'd manifested before. This was something larger, something that seemed to be made of living moonlight and primal fury. When I opened my eyes, the world had changed. I could see the corruption that clung to Serafina like a second skin, could trace the network of dark magic that connected her to forces beyond our reality. But more than that, I could see the threads that bound every living thing, the delicate web of life and death and rebirth that held creation itself together. And I could cut those threads. No, some distant part of my mind whispered. This isn't who you are. This isn't who you want to be. But the rage was so much stronger than restraint. The need for justice so much more compelling than mercy. Serafina took a step backward, fear finally creeping into her corrupted features. Lyra, you need to calm down. You don't understand what you're becoming. I understand perfectly. My voice was no longer entirely human, carrying harmonics that made the air itself tremble. I am the balance. I am the consequence of your choices. I am what comes after mercy has been exhausted. I raised one clawed hand, silver light gathering around it like captured lightning. One strike would be enough. One focused burst of lunar power would burn the corruption from her soul, along with the soul itself. She would die screaming, and I would feel nothing but satisfaction. This is what we were made for, the ancient voice whispered. To cleanse. To purge. To remake the world in silver fire. But as I prepared to strike, another voice cut through the red haze of my fury. Lyra, stop. Darius burst through the ruined front door, his own power blazing around him like midnight flame. His dark eyes took in the scene, my parents' bodies, my sister's corruption, my transformed state, and I saw understanding dawn in his gaze. Don't do this, he said, his voice carefully controlled but edged with desperate urgency. I know what she's done. I know what you're feeling. But if you kill her like this, if you give in to the destroyer's call, you'll never find your way back. She murdered them, I snarled, my clawed hands still crackling with lethal power. She poisoned them, used them, threw away their lives for her twisted ambitions. She deserves to die. Yes, he agreed quietly. She does. But not like this. Not by your hand, and not while you're lost to rage. He took a step closer, his movements careful and non-threatening. Look at yourself, Lyra. Really look. I glanced down and immediately recoiled in horror. The beautiful silver fur I'd admired before was gone, replaced by something that seemed to be made of living starlight and shadow. My claws were longer than any natural wolf's, designed not for hunting but for killing. And when I caught my reflection in the broken window, the eyes that stared back at me burned with the same terrible light I'd seen in the Shadowmere creature. I'm becoming what I hate, I realized with sick clarity. The rage is corrupting me just like the dark magic corrupted her. The prophecy, I whispered, finally understanding. The Luna who can unite or destroy all packs. The choice isn't about politics. It's about what I become in this moment. Darius nodded slowly. The destroyer and the savior are two sides of the same coin. The same power that could heal our fractured world could just as easily burn it to ashes. His eyes held mine, steady and trusting despite the monster I'd become. The choice is yours, Lyra. But once you cross this line, there's no going back. I looked at Serafina, still cowering against the wall, her corruption a visible stain on reality itself. It would be so easy. So satisfying. So right to end her here and now. But it would also be wrong. Not because she didn't deserve death, she absolutely did. But because becoming her executioner would make me something I couldn't live with. The ancient power fought against my decision, promising that justice demanded blood, that mercy was weakness, that the corruption could only be cleansed through annihilation. But underneath the seductive whispers, I could hear another voice, my parents' voices, speaking the values they tried to instill in me throughout my life. Strength without compassion is just brutality. Power without wisdom is just destruction. With tremendous effort, I pulled the lethal energy back into myself, letting my transformed state dissolve until I stood on shaking human legs among the ruins of my childhood home. Serafina sagged with relief, but I wasn't finished with her. You're going to turn yourself into the council, I said, my voice hoarse but determined. You're going to confess to everything, the corruption, the murders, the bargains with the Shadowmere. And you're going to accept whatever justice they decree. She lifted her head, defiance flickering in her corrupted eyes. And if I refuse? I let just a hint of silver light dance around my fingertips. Then I'll let the destroyer out to play after all. The defiance died immediately. The choice is yours, I continued, echoing Darius's words. Confession and redemption, or I stop fighting what I am and let justice take its natural course. She nodded quickly, terror overriding whatever protests she might have made. But even as I watched her agreement, even as I felt Darius's proud approval through the mate bond, I knew something fundamental had changed tonight. I'd touched that primal power, felt its seductive call, and barely pulled back from the edge of becoming something truly monstrous. The destroyer was still there, still waiting beneath my skin. And part of me, a part one didn't want to acknowledge, had liked how it felt to hold that kind of absolute power over life and death. I need to go, I said suddenly, backing toward the broken front door. I need to. I can't stay here. Not with them gone. Not knowing what I almost became. Lyra, wait, Darius reached for me, but I was already moving. Keep her alive until the council arrives, I called over my shoulder. Make sure she faces justice. But I can't. I need time to think. To figure out what I am. What I'm becoming. And before he could stop me, I ran. Not in human form, that was too slow, too vulnerable. I shifted into my silver wolf shape and fled into the wilderness, leaving behind the ruins of my old life and the bodies of the people who had loved me despite everything. Behind me, I could hear Darius calling my name, could feel his desperate attempts to reach me through the mate bond. But I couldn't go back. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Because tonight I had learned a terrible truth about myself. Given the right provocation, the right level of rage and betrayal, I was entirely capable of becoming the monster our enemies claimed I was. And until I figured out how to live with that knowledge, how to control the darkness that lurked beneath my silver light, I was dangerous to everyone I cared about. Including the mate who had just watched me nearly destroy my own sister in cold blood. The forest welcomed me with shadows and silence, and I ran deeper into its embrace, seeking some kind of peace in the wilderness where the only thing I could hurt was myself. But even in the depths of the ancient woods, I could feel the destroyer stirring restlessly beneath my skin. Waiting for the next time I would need its terrible power. Hoping that next time, I wouldn't be strong enough to pull back from the edge. If you're still listening to this story up to this point, why don't you subscribe to this channel to continue getting impactful daily stories like this? We would be most grateful if you can do that to help boost this video to reach everyone. Thank you. Chapter 5. The sacred grove existed outside of time. I'd been running for 3 days and nights through the wilderness, my silver wolf form carrying me deeper into territories that hadn't been touched by human or werewolf civilization in centuries. My paws had found paths that appeared only in moonlight, leading me through twisted trees whose branches whispered secrets in languages older than memory. And now, as dawn broke over the ancient circle of standing stones that marked this most holy place, I finally understood why my wolf had driven me here. The spirits were waiting. They appeared as silver mist at first, coalescing gradually into forms that were both wolfish and ethereal, the lunar spirits of generations past, every woman who had carried this terrible and beautiful power before me. Their eyes held the wisdom of ages and the weight of choices that had shaped the supernatural world. Sister, they spoke in harmony, their voices like wine through sacred groves. Daughter of our line. You have come seeking answers. I shifted back to human form, grateful for the simple white dress that materialized around me, a gift from spirits who understood the needs of the flesh even in their transcendent state. I've come seeking peace, I said, my voice hoarse from days of running. I almost killed my own sister. I felt the destroyer's power, and for a moment I wanted to use it. I wanted to watch the world burn. As we all have, the eldest spirit stepped forward, her form more solid than the others. She bore the marks of the first Luna, ancient symbols that covered her arms and throat like living tattoos. You think you are the first to feel the pull of absolute power? The first to stand at the crossroads between creation and destruction? Aren't I? I sank onto one of the moss-covered stones, exhaustion weighing on me like physical chains. The prophecy speaks of the reincarnation of the first Luna, the one who will either save or damn us all. That's me, isn't it? Yes and no. The first Luna's smile was both sad and knowing. You carry my essence, my power, my potential. But you are not bound by my choices or my failures. Each Luna who has come before faced the same decision you face now, whether to rule through fear or lead through love. But I'm different, I protested. I can feel it. The power inside me is stronger than anything that's come before. When I transformed that night, when I almost killed Serafina, I became something that could unmake reality itself. Because the stakes have never been higher, another spirit interjected, her form flickering like candlelight. The barriers between worlds are weakening. The Shadowmere grow bolder. Our kind faces extinction if the wrong choice is made. The first Luna approached me, her ethereal hand reaching out to touch my forehead. The moment her fingers made contact, visions flooded my mind. Centuries of Luna wolves rising and falling, some choosing the path of the destroyer and leaving only ashes in their wake, others finding ways to heal and protect their people. But in every vision, the cycle repeated. Peace followed by corruption. Unity followed by division. Love followed by betrayal. The cycle can be broken, the first Luna whispered into my mind. But only by one who understands that true power comes not from the ability to destroy, but from the wisdom to choose not to. You have that wisdom, daughter. I can see it burning bright in your soul. Then why am I so afraid? Tears I'd been holding back for days finally spilled over. Why do I feel like a monster wearing the skin of someone good? Because you have seen the darkness within yourself and chosen to face it rather than deny it. That is the mark of a true leader, not the absence of shadow, but the courage to carry light despite it. The vision shifted, showing me scenes of the present, Darius organizing search parties, his anguish at my disappearance bleeding through the mate bond I'd been trying so hard to block. My pack's confusion and grief as they mourned my parents while searching for their missing heir. And Serafina, locked in the council's custody, the corruption eating away at what remained of her humanity. She is dying, the first Luna said softly. The dark magic she embraced is consuming her from within. Soon there will be nothing left but an empty shell animated by Shadowmere will. Good, I said bitterly. She deserves whatever happens to her. Does she? Or is she simply another victim of forces too large to comprehend? The Shadowmere prey on wounded souls, daughter. They find those who feel unloved, unwanted, powerless, and they offer them everything their hearts desire in exchange for their essential selves. I wanted to argue, to insist that Serafina had made her own choices and deserved the consequences. But as the spirit's collective wisdom flowed through me, I began to see my sister's actions in a different light. The golden child who was never quite golden enough. The perfect daughter who lived in constant fear of disappointing everyone. The heir apparent who watched her status crumble the moment something more valuable appeared. She was hurting, I realized with reluctant understanding. All those years when I thought she had everything, she was drowning in expectations she could never meet. As you were drowning in shame you should never have carried, the first Luna agreed. Both of you were wounded by the same system that values power over compassion, perfection over authenticity. The Shadowmere simply offered her a different kind of cage. The ground beneath us trembled suddenly, and the spirits grew agitated, their forms flickering like flames in a strong wind. He comes, one of them whispered. Your mate follows your trail. I could feel him now through the bond I'd been suppressing. Darius's determination and desperate love burning like a beacon as he tracked me through the wilderness. But there was something else, something that made my blood run cold. He's not alone, I breathed, recognizing the wrongness that clung to the approaching presence like a stench. No, the first Luna's expression grew grave. Your sister has escaped. The corruption has given her strength beyond what her captors anticipated. She comes here with allies, creatures of shadow and spite that should not walk in the world of the living. She's going to try to steal my power again. I stood, feeling silver light begin to build under my skin. The sacred grove, it would amplify any ritual performed here. If she drains my Luna essence in this place, she'll become something far worse than just a corrupted werewolf. She will become the destroyer you refuse to be, the first Luna confirmed. And unlike you, she will have no anchor of love to pull her back from the abyss. The sound of howls echoed through the forest, not natural wolf voices, but the twisted cries of creatures touched by Shadowmere magic. They were getting closer. You must choose, daughter, the spirits spoke in unison. Will you face this threat as the destroyer, ending the cycle through violence and domination? Or will you find another way? What other way? I demanded. She's beyond reasoning with. The corruption has taken too much of her soul. Has it? Or do you simply see in her the darkness you fear in yourself? Before I could answer, Darius burst into the grove. He was in human form but barely contained, his power crackling around him like black lightning. His clothes were torn from days of hard travel, his hair wild, his dark eyes blazing with relief and terror in equal measure. Thank God, he breathed, crossing the stone circle in 3 long strides to sweep me into his arms. I thought I'd lost you forever. The moment his skin touched mine, the mate bond exploded back to life with overwhelming intensity. All his fear, his love, his desperate need to protect me flooded through the connection, and I nearly sobbed with the relief of no longer feeling alone. I'm sorry, I whispered against his chest. I couldn't stay. I was too dangerous, too close to becoming. I know, he said simply, his arms tightening around me. I understand why you ran. But you're not alone in this, Lyra. Whatever you're facing, whatever choices you have to make, we face them together. A wise mate, the first Luna observed approvingly. One who understands that true strength comes from unity, not isolation. They're coming, I told him, pulling back to meet his eyes. Seraphina and her Shadowmere allies. She's going to try to drain my power here in the sacred grove. His expression hardened. Then we stop her. How? The question burst out of me. I can't use the destroyer's power without risking corruption myself. But without it, I'm not strong enough to face what she's become. Are you not? The spirits' voices held gentle challenge. Have you forgotten what Luna power truly represents? You have focused so much on your ability to destroy that you have overlooked your capacity to heal. Heal? I looked around at the ethereal forms surrounding us. How can I heal corruption that deep? She's barely human anymore. The same way every Luna before you has healed the wounds of their time, the first Luna said. Through love. Through forgiveness. Through the recognition that all souls, no matter how lost, carry within them a spark of the divine. The howls were closer now, accompanied by the crash of bodies moving through the underbrush. Darius positioned himself protectively in front of me, his own power building to combat whatever was coming. But I stepped around him, moving to the center of the stone circle where the moonlight fell in silver pools. Lyra, what are you doing? He asked sharply. Making a choice, I said simply. The first wave of attackers burst into the grove, twisted creatures that might once have been werewolves but were now something far more nightmarish. Their forms were elongated and wrong, their eyes burning with the same green fire that had consumed my sister's soul. Behind them came Seraphina herself, floating rather than walking, her body wreathed in dark magic that made the air itself recoil. She looked nothing like the sister I'd grown up with. The corruption had stripped away her humanity, leaving something that was part wolf, part witch, and entirely monstrous. When she spoke, her voice carried harmonics that hurt to hear. Hello, sister, she hissed. Thank you for making this so easy. I was prepared to hunt you across continents, but you've delivered yourself right into my hands. I'm not here to fight you, Sarah, I said quietly, making no move to defend myself despite Darius's growl of protest behind me. She laughed, the sound like breaking glass. No? Then you're here to die. How refreshingly honest. I'm here to save you. The words hung in the air between us, and for a moment, something flickered in her corrupted eyes, surprise, perhaps, or a ghost of the sister she used to be. Save me? Her voice cracked slightly. I'm beyond salvation, Lyra. I've made bargains that can't be broken, embraced darkness that can't be undone. I am exactly what I chose to become. No, I said gently, stepping closer despite the waves of toxic energy rolling off her form. You're what pain made you. What fear drove you to become. But that's not who you really are. Don't. The word came out strangled. Don't you dare try to redeem me. Not after what I've done. Not after I killed them. You're right, I agreed, and she blinked in shock. You did kill them. You murdered our parents in cold blood for power that was never meant to be yours. What you did was unforgivable. Her face twisted with renewed rage. Then what are you? But I forgive you anyway. The silver light that had been building under my skin suddenly blazed outward, but this wasn't the destructive power of the destroyer. This was something else entirely, warm and healing and infinitely patient. The light of a Luna who chose love over vengeance, redemption over retribution. Serafina screamed as the silver radiance touched her, but it wasn't the scream of someone being destroyed. It was the cry of someone in agony having an infected wound cleaned, painful but necessary for healing. The dark magic that had wrapped around her soul began to burn away, revealing what lay underneath. Not the monster I'd expected, but a broken girl who had never felt good enough, strong enough, loved enough to matter. This is Luna power in its truest form, the spirits whispered around us. Not the ability to judge, but the strength to heal. Not the right to condemn, but the wisdom to forgive. Stop, Serafina gasped, falling to her knees as the corruption continued to burn away. Please, just let me die. Let me disappear. I can't. I can't live with what I've done. Yes, you can. I knelt beside her, my hands glowing with silver fire as I touched her face. Because I'm going to help you. We're going to heal together, both of us broken in different ways, both of us strong enough to choose something better. The Shadowmere creatures that had accompanied her began to wail and dissolve, their hold on reality severed as the darkness that sustained them was cleansed. The corrupted magic that had animated them returned to the void where it belonged, leaving only the clean scent of moonlight and growing things. I killed them, Serafina sobbed, her human features returning as the last of the corruption burned away. Our parents. I killed them for power, and it was never even mine to take. I know, I said softly, pulling her into my arms as she collapsed. And you'll spend the rest of your life making amends for that choice. But you'll do it as yourself, not as some Shadowmere puppet, but as Serafina Ravencrest, my sister, who lost her way and found it again. Around us, the sacred grove pulsed with renewed life. The Luna spirits smiled their ancient, knowing smiles before beginning to fade back into moonlight and memory. The cycle is broken, the first Luna's voice whispered on the wind. For the first time in centuries, a Luna has chosen the path of healing over the path of destruction. Your children and their children will inherit a world where love is stronger than fear, where redemption is always possible. Darius approached cautiously, his own power settling as the immediate threat passed. Is it over? He asked. This part is, I said, helping Serafina to her feet. She was weak from having the corruption burned out of her, but alive and herself again. The real work starts now. What real work? Serafina asked, her voice small and lost. Rebuilding, I said simply. Our pack. Our family. Our world. It won't be easy, and it won't be quick. You'll face trial for what you've done, and there will be consequences. But you'll face them as someone worthy of redemption, not as a monster beyond hope. She nodded slowly, tears streaming down her face. I don't deserve this. I don't deserve your forgiveness. Probably not, I agreed with a slight smile. But that's what makes it forgiveness instead of justice. And besides, I looked at Darius, at the man who had tracked me through the wilderness because he refused to let me face my darkness alone. I'm learning that love isn't about what people deserve. It's about what we choose to give. He stepped forward, his hand finding mine, and I felt the mate bonds settle into something deeper and more stable than mere passion. This was partnership. This was the recognition of two souls who had chosen to build something beautiful together despite the darkness they'd both carried. So what now? He asked. You've broken the ancient cycle, saved your sister, and established yourself as the Alpha Luna our world has been waiting for. What's next? I looked around at the sacred grove, at the standing stones that had witnessed countless generations of choices and consequences. At my sister, broken but healing. At my mate, strong enough to love me through my worst moments. Now we go home, I said. We bury our parents with the honor they deserved. We help Serafina face the consequences of her actions and find a way forward. We unite the packs under a new kind of leadership, one based on compassion instead of dominance. I squeezed Darius's hand, feeling the future spread out before us like an unwritten book. And we proved that the strongest power in any world is the choice to love instead of hate. The sun was fully up now, painting the grove in shades of gold and green. Somewhere in the distance, I could hear the howls of search parties, our people, coming to bring us home. For the first time since my wolf had awakened, I wasn't afraid of what I might become. Because I had already chosen who I was. Not the destroyer. Not a weapon to be wielded by destiny or prophecy or ancient powers. Just Lyra. The Luna who chose to heal instead of harm. The Alpha who led through love instead of fear. The woman who understood that true strength lay not in the ability to break things, but in the wisdom to make them whole. And as Darius and I helped my wounded sister to her feet, as we prepared to walk back into the world we would reshape together, I felt the Spirit's blessing settle around us like a mantle of starlight. The cycle was broken. The healing could begin. And for the first time in centuries, the Luna wolves would write their own destiny, one choice, one act of love, one moment of redemption at a time. The end was just the beginning. Thank you for watching this video. Subscribe, like and share this video to continue listening to this type of story daily and also, to appreciate this community too. I would like to hear your wonderful opinion about this story. Please comment below.